Then the second main topic that we want to have a look at today is the wearing of personal protective equipment. Now, Section 5, subsection 1 and 2 deals with this aspect. It stipulates that a person must wear cloth face masks or homemade items that cover the nose and mouth when in a public place. Important aspect of this provision is that aspect of public place, because we're going to be dealing with that in a bit more detail. Now, from the regulations, you will see there is not a definition of what a public place is. And in terms of the rules of interpretation of law, we then firstly have a look at the common interpretation from the dictionary. And I'm sure that everyone will understand what a public place is. Sections 26 and 27 of the regulations regulate the issue of alcohol and cigarettes, which, as we all know by now, has become a rather tender topic amongst many South Africans. The important thing to note with these two provisions is that the provision relating to alcohol prohibits the sale and transportation of alcohol, and then stipulates certain exemptions, namely for export purposes, for manufacturing of certain medical products, etc. But Section 27, which relates to the provision on tobacco products, only prohibits the sale of such products. There is no reference made in the provision for the transportation of cigarettes. It would thus be interesting to see what the outcome would be if a person was found in possession of cigarettes in a motor vehicle, as it appears to me that according to the regulations that is not an offence. What is important here to keep in mind is that it is an offence to transport alcohol. Whether such alcohol was bought or not, it is clear from the regulation that the transportation is prohibited under all circumstances. It would therefore not be a valid excuse that the alcohol belonged to you and that it was not purchased during this period. So now that we have discussed these various issues, I wish to turn our attention specifically to the issue of exercise, as this appears to have become a bit of a dilemma. Now, we have already dealt with the issue of protective equipment, namely the wearing of face masks, and I specifically referred you to the wording of the provision which stipulates that it must be worn when in a public place. I am sure that everyone would agree with me that the minute you left your place of residence and entered into the street, you were in public domain. It is therefore my opinion that all persons, once they leave their place of residence, must wear a face mask. There is uncertainty regarding whether that is necessary if you are driving in a motor vehicle. My only submission to you is that at the very least you must be in possession of a face mask, because one cannot foresee what may happen. Consider being involved in a motor vehicle accident or being stopped by a law enforcing official, and then you do not have a face mask so that you can safely interact with the relevant persons. In considering the provision relating to exercise, it is clear that only 3 types of exercise are permitted in terms of the regulations, and that is walking, running or cycling. Rollerblading, canoeing, surfing is not permitted. The regulations makes it very clear and stipulates those 3 forms of exercise. I can tell you that I have observed cyclists cycling to the end of a block and then standing, gathering, having a long chat. My submission in this regard is that that would be unlawful conduct and that you may be arrested. If you choose to partake in exercise activities between the hours of 6 and 9 in the morning, then you must either walk, run or cycle. Furthermore, it is my interpretation of the regulation that when you are partaking in your exercise activity, you are doing so in a public place, and therefore we find that overlap between the provision relating to exercise as well as that of wearing protection, being the face mask. I therefore submit that you are to wear your face mask when participating in your exercise activities. Then, while I am dealing with the issue of exercise, I have observed many people taking part in their exercise activities with their pets and mostly their dogs. Please, people, remember you are responsible for your pets. Make sure your pet is on a leash. Make sure they are under control. If your pet causes damage to a person in a public place, you will be held liable. And in this regard, I also wish to point out that as we are in lockdown, your pet may also be classified as a nuisance. So consider the people around you. If you have pets that make a noise and bark, this might be the time while you are at home to conduct some training for your pet. Now, finally, I wish to raise an issue with regards to a document that came into my possession, and then I'm going to give you a brief explanation. I hope that all of you will be able to see this document. This is a document which was issued by a police station. You can see the stamp at the bottom. I have blocked out certain information in order to protect innocent parties, but I will read the contents of this document to you. The document is on the letterhead of the specific sports club, and it reads as follows. It is dated the 4th of May 2020. COVID-19 permission to exercise at, and then the name of the club, to whom it may concern. This letter serves as permission to exercise during the daily allocated times 6 to 9 at, and once again the relevant sports club, situated at, and then the address. Anyone that, and there is inserted in that spot the specific sporting activity, which for purposes of this discussion is irrelevant. Anyone that must adhere to the rules of social distancing, sanitization and wearing of masks. No organized events or groups, no crowds. And it is signed by a person or a South African Police Services official from Westville Police Station. Now, these types of documents and conduct is really concerning. The fact of the matter is, no member of the South African Police Service has the right to issue such permission. No policeman can give you permission to act unlawfully and contrary to the regulations. The regulations are clear. It is walking, running or cycling. No other sporting activities have been authorized as yet. Please, do not obtain documents which you think grant you permission to conduct certain activities and later you are caught wanting. Stick to the letter of the law. It is obvious from what we read in social media and in the press that the law enforcement officers are stringent with regards to the regulations. My advice to you thus is adhere to them. Stick to the exercising times. Wear your face masks. Don't transport alcohol. Don't buy cigarettes. I trust you have found the broadcast today informative and that this now clarifies some of those controversial issues over which I've received so many telephone calls. In closing, be safe and God bless.